I'm known as Sandy B, affectionately, mainly because if I put Sandy Simmons into the web browser, she comes up as a stripper. So I decided to put my middle initial in, so affectionately known as Sandy B. This is my story about living, learning, loving and laughing from a near-death experience. Interesting. I thought you might be. Okay, so I'm going to fast forward to that magic age of 33, and I'm probably one of the older ones here in speaking and in the audience. So this is 30 years ago. I woke up on the morning of my birthday and I was completely frozen, and there was a voice talking to me, but it wasn't even my ego, it wasn't in my head, and it wasn't me. But it was saying to me, you are not in the right place. You're not even doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I curled up in a ball, completely scared of what I was hearing, because I thought, what do you mean? I'm married, I have 2 beautiful little children. What's all this about? This is me in bed and visualising something completely outside of myself and thinking, okay, keep talking, tell me what all this is about. So I laid there and I listened, and before I could get to the gold and the nitty-gritty, I heard these little voices going, "Mummy, I'm hungry." And so it brought me out of that space and time, and it worried me. I didn't sleep for weeks properly, but slowly I had to get back into life, and I just put it on the back burner, as we do with many things. So I'm going to fast forward another 10 or 11 years to when I was 44. And my 30s hadn't been, I guess, the quietest of times, very turbulent. I'm a migrant from England. My parents have both been very ill when we arrived. After 2 or 3 months, I'd turned around, being the eldest, and was the carer for everyone. So you can imagine what stories I'd made up about what I had to do in life. So I bundled through to this 44 years of age, and I wasn't well. We'd previously had all 4 parents in hospital, and there wasn't anyone else in Melbourne. Everybody else lived interstate or overseas. So we're caring for 4 parents, 2 teenagers, both working, and I was studying. So the stress was through the roof. And we had both fathers in hospital in the same week having open heart surgery. Tells you something about what's going on in the family. My mother-in-law had ovarian cancer and my mum had her ankles fused. This was all in the matter of about 6 weeks. So we were extremely stressed, and took a toll on our relationship, and we split up the next year. Completely emotional and not dealing with anything. I just said, take me home. I do not want to be here anymore. Do something, because I don't know what I need to do next. I just need to get out of here. So I'm in bed again one morning. The kids had gone to school. I wasn't feeling great. And the next thing, I left my body. I'm not technical, as you can see. Keep going. I'm fast forwarding here. So here I am laying in bed, and I saw my soul, my spirit leave my body. These are the nearest visuals I could get to what was going on for me. And I know that this has happened to many people. Anyone here still left here who's been through anything like this? Okay, so I'm glad I put the visuals up. So this is what it's like. You sort of see something rising out of you and you go, that's interesting. And then you're hovering, and you've heard a few people here say this. And if you could put the next slide up, because then I went into this colourful ball of light. And the next one, please. And I went up a golden tunnel. And I travelled faster and faster and faster and faster. And I was not scared. I was relieved that I was actually getting out of wherever I was. Earth, going wherever, heaven. And I travelled for what seemed a very long time. And I got to the top of this tunnel eventually, and I'm floating around, because you've got to realise that you don't have a body. You're just like this little spark bouncing around. And I sensed something else there. Now, it was nothing. But it said to me, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I've come for a rest." A rest? We don't have a rest here. And I said, "Well, I've come for a rest because," I said, "I can't handle it down there." So this other one said, "So if you haven't come here for a rest because you can't and there's no room for you, I suggest you go back down and finish what you're supposed to be doing." And I said, "I have no idea what that is." And the conversation went on a little longer. And then I said, "You have to tell me, because I still don't know." And I really want to stay here because it's all too hard. Anyway, came back at the end and said, "You do know it's right in front of you, and with a little bit of a push, which you can't really do to a spirit, but it felt like that, I'm back down the tunnels." And I landed back in my body, and I started vomiting and doing all sorts of things, and I really wasn't well. And then I didn't know what to do. I was home alone. So I rang a guy who I had been doing some work with, I guess you'd call him a spiritual healer, but he's from Russia. And he's actually a doctor and all sorts of things, done lots of study. And I rang him, and he just said, he listened to me, and he said, "You need to get out of that house." And I'm thinking, I've got the kids coming home soon. What am I supposed to be doing with getting out of this house? So my brain seemed to switch into some sort of mode, and half of it was feeling really unwell, and the other half just organised for myself to be transported by a friend to a colleague's place where I was working at a clinic with, who I knew would understand what I was going through and would allow me some space. So I organised that. Then I had to ring my husband, who wasn't living with me then, and said, "You have to come home and look after the kids because I'm not well and I'm out of here." So I end up at this friend's house. But for 3 weeks, I had temperatures where they would have said I'd have died. I chose this. I knew that half of me knew that I was going to be perfectly all right, but I had to take this ride. And I was very lucky to have 2 people who supported me through it. The temperatures were up 40. It was nothing for me to have those. I was drenched. I had to change my clothes time after time, the bed clothes, everything. This went on for 3 weeks, and they thought I wasn't going to make it. I went down to, being older, 5.5 stone. I don't know what that is in kilos. And suddenly it all stopped, but I was really weak. I had hardly drunk. I had nothing to eat. And I actually got up and, with some help, and looked in a mirror, and I just didn't recognise myself. But the upshot of it was I burnt off so much from the past. I had gone through lots of, I'm going to say hallucinations, but to me they weren't, all about previous lives, family members who'd gone before me, and it was like I'd let go and burnt that and let go and burnt and burnt and burnt and burnt. It took me another 6 weeks to be able to get up and walk outside. So it was a very long journey. My kids were a bit distraught because they hadn't seen me. But the lessons that I got from that were like, if I can get through this, what can I do to help other people when they're in the same position? Because it was my choice to do this. I didn't want to go to hospital. I'm a really sensitive person, as we heard yesterday. There's plenty of us around, or 10%. But I'm so sensitive that I would have probably not made it. So the things that I remember and the things that I tell my clients, don't stop a fever unless you have to. Don't stop and just take a Panadol just because you've got to keep going. Let it play out. Now, these are the people that are coming to me. I'm not telling everybody to do that because that would be irresponsible of me. But have a think before you do anything like that and say, do I really need to do this? Should I allow this process to play out? I'm very glad I did myself, because fast forward to another 10 years, we'd separated. I'd ended up getting better. I bought my own home, very happy, growing all my own vegetables, finished my studies. I was a naturopath and a few other things that I'd gathered on the way. And then I stood on the hill. I'd been there 10 years and I thought, I've done this. I've been there and done this. I don't need to do this anymore. And I put my hands up in the air and said, bring on what's next. Be very careful what you say. Because the next 18 months was Mum got cancer, Dad passed away, I sold my house, my business went down the gurgle and my business partner actually disappeared. I can't remember what else happened. It was a whole cascade of things. Oh yes, my partner who I had been with, who had helped me through this scenario 10 years earlier, went off with somebody else, and my car blew up. I had nowhere to live, no means of transport, didn't have my work anymore, but something kept me going, because I thought, if I've been through what I went through 10 years ago, I can get through this. So my choice was, I can have a breakdown or I can go overseas. So I went overseas and blew what money I had left for 6 months. Went to many places I'd wanted to go for many years. But when I came back, obviously still in the same boat, if not a little bit worse off, my resilience was up. And I thought, I've got through all of that. I can do anything now. The last 9 years has been quite rocky. I'm waiting for the next episode, or this episode to finish and the next one to start, and I feel like I'm right on the precipice of something big happening. One of the things that came out of that time when I was 33, when I had that first vision, was something was born in my brain. A lot of things died off, but some new things came through. And it is to have a place, a safe place for people to come, and not necessarily to do what I did, but to have a safe place to come, which is very similar to the Her Story, where we can come and actually speak about our visions and our things that have happened to us in our life and feel really, really safe. So I thank Gertrude for putting all of this on, because this is the first time I've ever spoken about this. It's quite big for me. And what I want to just leave you with is the fact that, yes, it was my decision to go through this, and I was probably hanging in the balance of life and death, but I knew I would be fine, and so did the people that were supporting me. And I'm very happy to do that for anybody now, because I don't have any fear around that. But of course, as I said before, it would be irresponsible of me to say, obviously babies and the elderly are a different case, but the majority of adults, could do something similar, and you hear of anything, I'm very happy to support them through it. That's my story. I thank you for listening, and I hope that you have had something with the visuals to help you understand what actually happens. And when I came back, it was the same scenario as leaving. I do now have the philosophy of love, truth and wisdom, which is the old alchemical version of perhaps some other things that people talk about today. But I do believe that if you are truthful and love for yourself as well as others wins, and that's when you get your wisdom. I've also been told you don't actually get wise till you're 75, so I've got a few years to go yet. Thank you.